Hello, my sweet transvestites from Transsexual Transylvania. My name's Emmy, and I'll be doing a directing presentation today about Rocky Horror Picture Show. I love this picture. They're already wearing masks! First thing right off the bat, we're staying true to the original. If I'm directing this, it's not going to be like the Laverne Cox and Victoria Justice version where it's all poppy and polished and even Frank-N-Furter is bedazzled. That's not true to the original core of it. The queer culture and the ballroom culture where people didn't have much but they did a lot with it. I'll come around to this idea more, but I want to plant that seed in your heads. The first thing is, I want it to be sexy. Now, this show is notoriously sexy. I mean, half the cast is in their underwear the whole time. So we want to still have that if possible. Of course, I'll stay within the school's guidelines if they say you can't have X, Y, or Z in something, but it's a one-night show on Halloween, and I think we can get away with a fair amount, especially it being in the black box, and if it's socially distanced, the audience will be smaller, just because that's what needs to happen. So I really want the ebb and flow of the show to be through sexual tension. That doesn't have to be that everyone's naked all the time. There's the anticipation that the show is so known for. So we want to keep that back and forth going that makes this kind of tangential plot go together through relationships. What rubs us the wrong way? These are things we'll be investigating in the rehearsal room. What is abrasive in a good way? What reminds us of things? It was right after the Stonewall riots, so it's an act of rebellion in and of itself. It was about 7 years after the Stonewall riots, but the gay rights movement was only starting to get its feet on the ground. I mean, gay marriage wasn't legal till I was a freshman in high school. So I really want to focus on the idea of LGBTQ youth making their own families. A lot of times in the 80s, there'd be houses where someone in the community made enough money, they passed enough as trans, they hid themselves well enough, or they got a job where they weren't going to get fired, usually creative, for being gay. And they made enough money to buy an apartment, and then they let everyone in because they made it and they were paying back for their community. These houses were decorated with trash, but beautiful trash. Sort of like in A Streetcar Named Desire. I know, big shock. I couldn't resist referencing Tennessee Williams. Blanche Dubois brings home this red paper lantern, and she puts it over the exposed light bulb, and it was probably a 5-cent lantern. But it meant so much more to her because she put it there, and it was this piece of beauty that she could add to the world. Things like that will really add to our production, the personal touches, the connections to the pieces. We want to steer clear of the idea that people who have a lot of sex are bad. Frank-N-Furter sleeps with 2 people, and so does Janet. And I think that really says something about the society and the point they're trying to say about society. Frank-N-Furter is the outcast, a literal alien who is thrown off by his alien household, and then he and the siblings go and they come to the United States where they're even outcasts there, and then when he's going to go back home, the siblings throw him off. He's an outcast at every single intersection of where he could be accepted. And all he wants to do is rebel and have sex and do drugs and wear nothing and be different. And all Janet wants to do is be the same, and she wants to get married, and she saved herself. Oh, Brad. And that these 2 people have the same body count by the end of the play. I think that says something. Ballroom culture. So, as I was saying, the LGBTQ youth that founded this movement were the inspiration for this movie. Of course, they have to be. People who had very little to make drag with. I'm sure you've seen early pictures of RuPaul. There's this grunginess. There's a manic need to go against the society, but also to express something beyond gender. I've included a couple historical pictures here, this one being my favorite. You see old pictures of Martha P. Johnson. That idea that there was a community of people supporting each other and trying their best to make art out of nothing is how I think Rocky Horror is connected to today. The idea of dress up plays into this. You had balls in ballroom, and you had competitions about who could dress things up the best. Finding trash and making it your own. Finding cheap little things that are tacky and seeing the beauty in them is something I really want to get to the root of here. Very handmade, kitschy things. I think it would be fun to teach the cast to crochet a little square. We put them on all the little tables between seats or something. Cozies for hand sanitizer. Burger King crowns. Things that are resembling something better. They resemble the real thing. In the movie, they're wearing these, like, the hospital gowns that Frank-N-Furter is wearing. The, like, lab coat thing is this weird green with blood on it, and then the girls have the masks, but they're scantily clad, so what are they protecting because it wasn't a virus? Just the idea of medicine. The idea of something that is very theatrical in nature that people buy into when you're a kid. This party hat with a piece of tulle hanging out symbolizes royalty. Burger King crown symbolizes royalty. Christmas lights, I think, are a very big part of this, and paper lanterns, like I said with Blanche Dubois. Christmas lights were big for Italian-American immigrants to put up year-round and make it feel like Christmas all the time because they were very poor, and it added sparkle, and I love that lighting effect too. Having that soft, colorful light adds that sensuality to the space that takes out the harsh lights and makes it more our little secret, our fun playtime, come into my world and experience Rocky Horror. And it's very inexpensive. Everything is affordable. I want to have, back to that deep lighting of closeness, a sensuality that goes through the show, the ebb and flow of the sexual tension, tightening and releasing it. A smoky, sensual, alive dive bar that's plastered with posters for things, band posters and probably student art and posters that will make up for fake bands or Frank-N-Furter's blah blah blah, hot dogs maybe, but lighting that is electric but still secretive. Neon signs would be great if we could get them, but reds and color. It can be false, it doesn't have to feel real because you're coming into the black box. I don't think we should shy away from the idea that the black box is the black box. You can see the imperfections on the walls. You can see the weird bit that juts out for no reason. You can see the fireplace bricked over, and that's what the space is, and it's not apologizing for it. It's a good farewell to the black box that we all know and love, but it's also an admittance that this is our space. This is a place we've claimed. We're not pretending it looks like something else. So there will be a familiar atmosphere and the interactions will be familiar. I want the vibe of this show to be, you've come into the house. You've been accepted. You come off the streets, you can live with us. You know these people and you love seeing them have fun. I really, really value cast closeness and ensemble mentality, especially for a show like this where everyone's going to be pitching in little one-liners, little visual gags, helping each other out with stuff. Ensemble is key. And if the cast knows each other and is having fun, the audience can tell. And the audience will feel like they're in on it. Fuck gender roles. My favorite sentence. Please enjoy the sushi roll as a substitute. Non-traditional casting is something I'm very excited about. Looking into it, totally. I love the idea of a male Janet and a female Brad, or just two males or two females. Eddie could definitely be a woman. I think that would be very cool. I'd love to get a professor in there to be the narrator, someone with a very deep voice, very calm, not British, that's so overdone, but almost every character could be a different gender, probably aside from Rocky, unless we wanted to do some script rewriting, but I think it could be very, very easy to fuck with gender in this, because it doesn't really matter what gender they are. They're all going beyond gender in the end. I want it to be as student-made as possible. I've included our own technical theater picture. Student keyboardist would be really cool to have on stage. I really don't think we need that much more instrument-wise other than just a keyboard. And also Foley artists. You know when you watch, well, maybe you don't watch, but I watch old-timey radio shows, there's a person in the back with a table, and they've got the door slapper, and they've got the bells, and all the shoes that make tippity-tap noises. And I think that could be a really fun element to add to this show, is having live sound effects being made and added to things, and having that be one or two people's jobs, that they are dedicated to making the sound effects for the show. They would also be phantoms. The stagehands would pop out from behind the doors. The script I read calls for 4 phantoms up to 6, but they don't really have to sing per se. Like there's the Janet, or they'll just sing like a very basic melody. And I'm not a musical director, but I understand music. And if people can learn their own notes and melodies, if I give them recordings and sheet music and they can learn it, I could certainly direct the music that way. And I think that for the phantoms, just joining in with whatever their voices is kind of the point of it. The phantom is the everyday person, kind of a Addams Family vibe of deadpan, and that's what makes them funny, Janet. So I'd love to have like all black eye makeup and a gray ascot or something, and that designates them as a phantom. They're Foley artists, the keyboard artists. They're wearing headsets and moving set pieces, which there aren't very many of, but black boxes. We're not shying away from the fact that this is just a space that we've decorated and made our own. We've covered it in handmade things and feel a personal connection to it, but having a headset on I think could be very funny. I mean, seeing the stage manager is always funny. Think about our town. It's a laugh riot. Then also, yeah, all the people who are on stage will be a phantom. And I want to incorporate those iconic props. You bring your toast, you bring your confetti, things like that. I definitely want to market it as props are encouraged but not necessary. So if you want to bring your toast and you know about all these things, but if you see our ad for Rocky Horror and you know that there's that like weird thing where you have to bring a bunch of stuff, so you're like, I just won't go. I don't want to encourage that. So having something, maybe we put in a dream world where we had an unlimited budget, we put those props under every seat or something and with a little card, and a phantom comes down and tells you at the top of the show, please turn off your cell phones, and this is what this is for, this is what this is for, try and keep up, bitch, and then like leaves. That might be a little confusing for people who don't know. If there's so many versions to this in the audience, maybe the Foley artist does it, and if you want to play along, you can. If you brought your own thing, but you don't need it to be part of the show. But I definitely want to include those ideas. The iconic Scott toilet paper. Maybe phantoms play catch with the Scott toilet paper across the stage above the actors. There's elements of it, but I don't want it to be required that you know this going into it. Production dreams. Okay, if I got my way and I had an unlimited budget, this is what I'd love to do to the Black Box. I want a smoke machine so bad, especially when the house explodes, just poof, and it's everywhere, and maybe we put them behind the doors and it just, you get the smoke coming out from the side, so it's like we're blasting off. I'd love to plaster the walls, not with actual plaster, but with posters and pictures and student art, like I said, and maybe underneath some of them we have lights that stick to the walls. You know, those like touch closet lights? Maybe if they are all connected and wired, we could turn them on and they'd flash like the spaceship all around you. It's as if we're taking off. Flash, 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 flash. That would be awesome. A dream. Don't know if it could happen. I'd love to get our props and set as much as the set is, which would probably be just designating out where the chairs would be, taping that stuff out, getting some black boxes as early as possible. because we want to be personalizing the props, draw on everything. I don't give a shit. It's all a cast of a 6th grader. Put whatever you want. It's going to get taken off in 6 months. So draw on things. Let it be obscene. It's whatever the people want it to be. This is not going to be billed as a kid-friendly show, as Rocky Horror shouldn't be. Crochet something. Oh, you do watercolor? Let's put it up. We'll put our own personal touches, because when you're sitting in your dorm room and you're looking at your posters, the ones that have a personal connection that you made or have something important to you, someone gave you that, it matters to you more. As a person, it makes you happy to see it. And making our own comfortable, happy space would be a dream. If we had infinite time to customize our space as the actors and crew, that would be amazing. And I'd love to have the crew in the rehearsals as soon as possible. Assuming because of COVID, we'll probably have to split it up and do some smaller rehearsals. Having a crew-only rehearsal or a Phantoms-only rehearsal, where we talk about what makes a Phantom, things like that. But just keeping in mind that the crew wouldn't just be there for tech and show. I'd love to have a dress-up chest that the audience could pull from as they come in. You walk in the door, and you know we have that props chest, and you can pick out a feather boa, a big top hat, a mustache on a stick, things that add to your sense of festivity. So again, you don't have to have come in your kinky boots and your leather to be able to see this show. You can still be in on the fun, decorative aspect of it, because we provide it for you. I'd also love when there's that scene at the end where Frankenfurter has orchestrated them all, frozen and posed to be in the shows, and then in the movie they're in this underwater scene and it's very cool and they have like synchronized swimming and the caps, and then in some versions of the play it's just like a big orgy of limbs coming out of this like pile. Don't think that's gonna work COVID-wise, but I'd love to have an individual kiddie pool for each of the actors in it. And then they're socially distanced, but they're in their own water. It's their last scene, so they can be wet, and then they're supposed to be disheveled after the explosion anyway, so it makes sense that they could get wet, get their clothes wet, get their hair wet, and just, like, play around with the water as part of a dancing element. I think that would be interesting. And again, ideally, the iconic props at every seat. We've got our toilet paper, we've got our toast, we've got our blah, 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 blah for every person, but that's probably not possible, and logistically, it's a little bit of a nightmare. Theatrical intimacy, something I care very much about. This show is sexy, and we want to make sure that all the actors and crew and designers and audience are okay with what we're putting out. So there will be at least one full rehearsal that is just dedicated to theatrical intimacy, teaching about it, what it is, and then we will follow the theatrical intimacy education's guidelines for how we go about our sexy scenes. There are a couple sex scenes in this show, but for COVID reasons alone, we're not having any sort of like, the Heathers, bodily contact kind of sex scenes. I imagine it much more in this theatrical realm that we've created of things symbolize things. It's choreographic, everyone's wearing plastic hazmat suits that are clear, and you've got a bikini on underneath, so there's this false element of intimacy with this protection. We bring out a piece of glass and they make out through it, things like that. Yes, very theatrical manner, and it'll be tongue-in-cheek. It's all a nod to the idea of what sex in COVID is. I don't know if you've all read the City of New York released guidelines for having sex during COVID, and they basically suggested that glory holes were a very good idea. Soap operas right now are using blow-up dolls in sex scenes. I kid you not. Can you imagine signing up? Oh, the soap opera. I will be famous one day. What? So yes, social distancing is the top priority. Safety of cast, crew, and audience is my top priority. To be able to get away with as much COVID-related PPE as we want, we should just set it in 2020 specifically. Treat it like a period piece of right now, so there's no apologizing for having hand sanitizer everywhere, for having the audience wear masks, Shane suggested the idea of a clear plastic shield so you could still see the actors' faces. I'd love the idea of using our ladders and our whatever this thing is called, this raised platform for painting, and putting them up so we have levels, but also if you're far away enough as an actor from the other actors, we can get more times where they're 6 feet apart if we add a vertical element to it. To make it modern, there's really not that much to change. These outfits are timeless, they're vintage for the time. The underwear wouldn't be 50s style underwear for Janet. Also, they go into the house looking for a phone, so you could just look for a phone charger. That makes sense. And I'd love the idea of Brad to be wearing an HPU golf shirt. Again, whatever we can get away with. It's a one-night Halloween show of Rocky Horror, and I don't think the administration's gonna care. So I'm willing to push the limits here a little bit. Explore seating the guests in home units, maybe. Like you have to sit with your roommates or your housemates. That could get hard to track because we don't have any proof, so people could just lie. The idea of standing for the show with like a cafe table that 2 or 3 people are around, or the idea of 2 chairs in a taped off area that is all your own. You could put your bag down, you can dance in there when it's time for the time warp, you can set up shop there if you wanted to build a fort. Maybe put chalk out so you can draw on the stage floor, because who cares? So in my closing remarks, I'll just read this to you. This show should be beyond all a fun Halloween experience that is enjoyable and reminds people of the joys of live theater, especially when you could just watch the movie online or in your dorm room alone. I want to invigorate it with queer culture and social commentary, especially with the character of Eddie. Casting outside of the department is 1000% okay. Casting outside of gender is 1000% okay. I feel like every character could be gender bent, except Rocky. But I'm not ruling out Rocky. I'll be looking for people who will make a good ensemble and support each other. Although it will be fully rehearsed and choreographed, there will certainly be moments to improv, and I think the good base of comedic timing will add to the show. On-stage deadpans, stagehands, musicians, and Foley artists will give it more of a live feel, but also solidify the atmosphere. We'll work with what we can and invite the audience to come into our world for a night. So, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share with you my Rocky Horror ideas, and I hope to hear back from you soon. Thanks, guys!